Near the end of September, autumn rolls around for us folks up in the northern hemisphere. The leaves start to change color, pumpkin spice takes over everything, and the cool, cloudy weather makes us want to bundle up. Is what I'd like to say, but Southern California is currently in denial and thinks it's still summer. But regardless of your weather situation, we become ever so aware of the slew of joyful holidays we will experience in the coming months. And what should be the introduction to the festivities? In store windows, on house porches, in movies, shirts, and more, you see the ever-familiar icon of the jack-o'-lantern. Halloween is coming. Regardless of its origins, the jack-o'-lantern is a pleasant tradition for many. Less see it as scary or eerie, and more so a fun reminder that fun times are ahead. With its hollow body, carved-out face, and a candle or some light source placed on the inside, it gives off a glow. A warm glow. And one can even say, a cozy glow. Bet you were wondering how I was going to make this about cozy, weren't ya? Give me a break. I had to make this Halloween theme somehow. Spoilers for My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, by the way. And besides, she's a villain. Villains are totally Halloween-esque. And she's a child. Some people find children super scary. Ooh. Hello, everyone. My name's Aloubell, and I think I justified myself enough. The My Little Pony villain Cozy Glow is our topic today. I mean, just look at her. She's terrifying.
Really trying to sell this as a Halloween video, huh?
Yes, and I shall succeed. But before we get into it, special thanks to Broly Samuel, Merely a Cat, and my other channel members, as well as Amy and Joy Newson, Stealthy Pumpkin, and others who donated over on Ko-fi for supporting me and my channel. If you want to support me as well and keep this channel alive, you too can become a channel member by clicking join, donate on Ko-fi, or commission me for a chibi on Artistry. Links down below. Anyway, for those who don't know, Cozy Glow is a young Pegasus pony that was introduced to the cast in Season 8 of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. She started out as a student at Twilight School of Friendship and close friend of the Cutie Mark Crusaders. But due to her very suspicious actions throughout the season and her honestly being less than subtle, most viewers within the fandom were able to at least figure out that she was putting on a goody two-shoes act for some reason. To no one's surprise, she was the Season 8 villain who was determined to get rid of Twilight and her friends, destroy magic, and become the new Empress of Friendship, all for the sake of power. She was able to achieve most of her plan due to some useful knowledge that a previous villain named Tyrek gave her. Cozy was insanely smart as well. She knew precisely how to manipulate people with her charismatic personality and innocent appearance, and she followed the proper precautions to get the more troublesome characters out of the way. Honestly, her and Starlight were the smartest villains in the show. Starlight didn't lose. She and Twilight were matched in power, and Starlight had leverage with the time travel spell. She just chose to stop fighting because friendship is magic, and Cozy only lost because of the Deus Ex Machina known as the Tree of Harmony. But regardless, Cozy was captured and thrown into Tartarus to serve her imprisonment next to Tyrek. Some time passes, and due to reasons, Cozy and some other villains, Sombra, Tyrek, and Chrysalis, are rounded up to deal with Twilight and her friends once and for all. Sombra gets axed pretty quickly due to his ego, so the final three baddies end up being Cozy, Chrysalis, and Tyrek, the Legion of Doom. While their relationship and trust of each other started off rocky, they eventually learned to work together and came stupidly close to taking over all of Equestria. And probably the world. But because, once again, friendship is magic, they lost and were ultimately turned to stone for presumably all eternity. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Cozy Glow, a 12-ish year-old filly, was not only sentenced to Tartarus, but was ultimately turned to stone, potentially forever. Were either of those punishments the right call to make? Especially in a show where villains get reformed fairly frequently and creatures are given multiple chances to turn a new leaf? Well, let's go over Cozy's crimes real quick and we'll discuss this. Kidnapping a faculty member, Starlight. Kidnapping a government official, Chancellor Nace. Attempted to destroy magic, which would have resulted in many creatures dying. Attempted murder of the main 7. Yes, I'm including Starlight, because duh. Attempted regicide, theft of the magical artifacts, conspiracy, inciting a riot, attempting a hostile takeover of a country, massive property destruction, terrorism, imprisoning the ruling parties of a country, aka the princesses. Granted, she had help with this, but still. Not to mention that she is casually racist/speciesist and just straight up gets off on others suffering. She is the textbook definition of a psychopath. But did she deserve her punishments? After all, she is still a child. Her brain is still developing. And I don't care what some of the writers or whoever worked on the show said about them thinking of her as a tiny adult. This was basically just the headcanon of some of the people who worked on the show. It's not even generally agreed upon amongst the people who worked on the show. It was never established in any of the canons that this is the case, so she is legitimately just a child. So, should she have gotten punished so severely? Yes and no. She does deserve punishment, and a punishment that will isolate her from others in a way that she can't hurt or manipulate people. Cozy has proven that she feels no remorse for her actions and is 100% aware of what she's doing. Twilight even tried to give her an out when they confronted her during the season 8 finale, but when Cozy made it very clear that she had no intention to change, she had to be put away. Let me be clear. I'm all for forgiveness, but Cozy proved to be dangerous, so she needed to be taken away from those she could hurt.
But Aloe, Cozy is only 12-ish. She shouldn't have been sent to Tartarus. That's literally the show's equivalent to HE double hockey sticks.
Is it though? It just seemed like an underground prison to me. And yes, I know that's technically what Tartarus from the Greek myths was supposed to be, but the MLP Tartarus is not the same as traditional Tartarus. Unlike traditional Tartarus, MLP Tartarus, from what we've seen, has no torment, torture, or suffering other than boredom going on in there. Tartarus in MLP is literally just prison. It is just a hole that really isn't that deep underground where creatures and criminals are kept in cages. Ergo, Cozy was just sent to jail. Now, should she have been sent to adult jail or more like a juvenile detention center for the chance to be rehabilitated? Yeah, probably. After all, she is only 12-ish, despite her incredible intellect and apparent inability to care for others that led to her crimes. Regardless, she is still a child, a tiny child that doesn't even have any special physical strength or magic other than flight. She's talented in manipulation and planning, but when you think about it, Cozy loses all of her power when everyone is aware of what she's really like. Unless she can find someone to sympathize with her so that she can trick them, she has no real means of fighting back. So, while Tartarus isn't as bad as traditional Tartarus, it was probably more extreme of a punishment than necessary. There's other places to detain her where she can be more monitored and potentially helped. It's honestly a sad day when we consider a child a lost cause. Heck, I consider it a sad day when anyone is considered a lost cause. Anyone has the potential to change if they want to, regardless of how far they've fallen. But Cozy wasn't given the same kind of chances other villains in the show were. And that's weird. And yes, I know I already brought up that Twilight tried to reason with her, and Cozy very blatantly said, "Forget you." But Twilight immediately gave up on this child after one conversation. Even if Tartarus must be her punishment, to just leave her unattended and not even try to talk to her again is both cold and foolish. Kind of messed up on the Princess of Friendship's part. The way that the show treated Cozy was very similar to how Thomas Astruc treated Chloe Bourgeois in Miraculous Ladybug. Granted, Cozy was smarter and more of a threat, and just generally more competent. But the idea that such a young person can never change is a troubling one for sure. And to be honest, I'm not entirely convinced that Cozy started off as a bad person. We'll explore that idea later. And now to add on top of the prison sentence, in which she was foolishly placed next to one of Equestria's greatest threats, and the very one who aided her crimes at that, she was later turned to stone indefinitely. Again, by this point, she engaged in even more atrocities, so I understand the logic of her punishment, but again, it's not like she, Tyrek, and Chrysalis were still OP from absorbing others' powers. They had been disarmed at this point and could no longer be as big of a threat as they wanted to be. Had they still kept their OP powers, then yeah, maybe temporarily turning them to stone might have been the call to make, especially if they had no other ways of detaining them. But as it stands, at the very end, their powers were taken, and then they were turned to stone, which was a bit overkill. They were basically executed, and yet somehow their situation is worse, because if Discord's situation is anything to go by, those who get turned to stone are somewhat conscious and are just forced to be frozen for all time. But if that's literally just a Discord thing due to him being the god of chaos, then the Legion of Doom is perpetually asleep with almost no hope of waking up. Of course, with them just being stone, there's always a glimmer of hope that they can be awoken one day to give them another chance. We'll probably never see this outcome in canon, and it's probably unlikely, but there's always a chance. Regardless, the correct way to deal with them would have been to, first, separate them, and then imprison each of them in a place best suited to keep them detained with efforts for reformation. And now, having gone through all of that, Cozy Glow is a really weird character. It's weird that we know nothing about her other than she craves power. She has no backstory whatsoever, no reasons for her actions. Now, I'm not saying that villains need a reason to be villains. Many of the iconic Disney villains were just bad for the sake of being bad. They wanted to do evil things for their benefit, and that was that. And we love them for it. We didn't need some sympathetic backstory or to know why. We were just on board for the ride due to their charismatic personalities, their intelligence, and the general show they put on for us, the audience. And of course, we enjoyed seeing how the hero would vanquish them. Cozy doesn't need a reason why, other than she likes power and doesn't care how she gets it. She's a lot like Sunset Shimmer in that regard. Sunset had a weak backstory and reason to do what she did in the first Equestria Girls. She simply wanted to be the most powerful. So it's not like MLP is foreign to using these types of villains. But what makes Cozy so weird, and what makes her actually need a backstory, is her age. That and pretty much every other villain in the show either had some justification for what they were doing, or at very least a backstory to what happened to them before they decided to wreak havoc in the present. But not Cozy. So, Cozy is weird by Friendship is Magic standards. But even ignoring that, the fact that Cozy is a child means we need more info as to how she was even capable of doing what she did. As a child, someone had to be looking after her, if not raising her. Even Gallus, who is an orphan, had Grandpa Gruff and the other Griffins, sort of, looking after him to some capacity. Even if they didn't like it, he still had people around him to aid in his growth, for better or worse. Where are Cozy's caretakers? She can't have just been by herself. Who is her family? Where did she come from? How did she end up at the School of Friendship? How did absolutely no one know who she was? In fact, how did Cozy have permission to even join the school if no adults signed her up for it? Why weren't any caretakers accountable for after she committed her crimes? Literally no one was around to advocate for her or take responsibility. Heck, Twilight should have even taken some responsibility for letting in a child with no other information on her. You could make the argument that Cozy forged some documents, but at the end of the day, Twilight should have had some proof, like some physical proof, that this child had some caretakers. Twilight School had parent-teacher days. Seriously, who was going to show up for Cozy? I know I'm lingering on this point for a long time, but it kind of matters. I can accept that Cozy is a 12-year-old psychopath. What I can't accept is that she just seemed to manifest out of thin air. Where did this child come from? She just doesn't make any sense. And to add on to that, it's a bit strange that Cozy was included in the Legion of Doom at the end of the series. Not that she didn't qualify after everything she pulled, but the general idea of bringing the villains back for one last hurrah was to call upon old favorites to celebrate how far MLP and the main characters have come. You know, fan service. Chrysalis hails from all the way back in Season 2 and had a cameo in Season 4, became a threat again in Season 6, reminded the audience she still existed and was lurking in Season 8, and then came back to exact her revenge in Season 9. She's the longest standing villain in MLP Friendship is Magic as a whole. Tyrek, while not showing up until Season 4, has the nostalgia factor because he was a villain in the very first generation of MLP. Not only that, but in his first go-around as a villain in Friendship is Magic, he and Twilight graced us with the best and most memorable fight sequence in the entire history of the show. Who said MLP was just for little girls? Not this fight scene! And then he too gets a cameo in Season 5, and proceeds to fully return in Season 8, and then came back for his revenge in Season 9. Both Chrysalis and Tyrek had history in this show and a long-lasting effect both on the characters and the audience. And then you have Cozy Glow. Don't get me wrong, she's a cool villain, one of the best. But imagine, for a moment, that Batman was ending. Like, totally ending. It was all going to end in one final showdown. The Bat family versus all of the Batman villains that matter. I'm talking the Joker, the Penguin, Scarecrow, Bane, Riddler, Ra's al Ghul, and even though they aren't fully villains anymore in some canons, let's throw in Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy just for funsies. Mr. Freeze, Killer Croc, etc., etc. And then, to top off the list of villains to come back for this final battle is Carl. Carl, who did some really terrible and messed up stuff either in the last issue or final movie of Batman. Carl, who is super smart and capable and almost killed Batman. Carl gets included in this final villain lineup for the final battle of Batman, along with all these other iconic characters who have this long, complex history in the franchise. I mean, it's not like Carl can't be there, and he's super memorable and capable. It just feels weird, you know? Cozy Glow feels weird. I'm not mad that she's there. It's just weird that she's there. I think most fans would have just been happy with Chrysalis, Sombra, and Tyrek. You know, if Sombra wasn't a dum-dum. But like I said, Cozy was cool and a valuable member of the Legion of Doom. She was the most socially smart of the three, and her presence provided amusing contrast. What with her tiny, adorable design along with the much larger and more intimidating Tyrek and Chrysalis. And no one can deny that the three had fun banter and an awesome song. Now, to circle back around to something I mentioned earlier, Cozy Glow's first appearance doesn't match what comes immediately after. In the episode Marks for Effort in Season 8, her debut episode, the Cutie Mark Crusaders desperately want to attend the School of Friendship, but are denied since they're already so good at friendship. Cozy, who wants to be their friend, tries to help the CMC get into the School of Friendship by pretending that she's a failure in her schoolwork that they helped her study for. Her goal was for the teachers to think that the CMC were bad at friendship and needed to be at the School of Friendship with her. But the plan backfired, and the CMC were banned from the school and interacting with the students for suspected sabotage. Here's when things get especially weird. When no one is even paying attention to her and she is in her own private space, Cozy shows remorse for getting the CMC in trouble. No one knows she was responsible, but she still took it upon herself to go to Starlight for advice on how to fix this. Cozy owns up to her mistake and gets the CMC out of trouble. Now, if Cozy was 100% bad and a psychopath, then why would she feel bad about what she did? Cozy is a manipulator who acts all cutesy and helpful when around others, and when she's by herself, she's a lot more menacing, sadistic, sassy, condescending, and unhinged. But when she was completely alone, she felt guilty. Why seek advice to fix the problem? Cozy isn't stupid or ignorant. From what we come to know about her, she definitely didn't need to go to Starlight to fix the problem. She definitely would have known to just confess to help the CMC. You could make the argument that Cozy was evil for the entire episode and was already setting her plan into motion. Why even befriend the CMC? Well, by getting to the CMC, she has easier access to their sisters in the main 7 in general. By doing this stunt, Cozy made herself known to the faculty, and she'll have an easier time gaining the status and power she wanted. Plus, when she was being tested on what each element was, she specifically said control when looking at the element of magic, because to her, the magic of friendship is a means of controlling others, thus hinting that she was already a bit corrupted. And so, with all of that in mind, you could further make the argument that Cozy went to Starlight to further her plan of being on the radar of the faculty. She wanted to not just be another face in the crowd, but noticed. Getting the loved ones of the faculty banned is a pretty good way to get noticed. So, I get all of that. But what still bugs me was her private behavior. Her looking worried and guilty for getting the CMC in trouble. Who was she performing for? Us, the audience? That doesn't make sense because she's not a fourth wall breaking character. Cozy drops her act whenever she's alone. So why feel guilty if she didn't have a conscience? I suppose you could say that the CMC getting banned wasn't her plan. Maybe in order to get close to the main 7, she fully intended to get the CMC to be students with her, but when that didn't happen, it threw her plans off, and so she adjusted her plans. But even if that were the case, her face when she messed up was not one of annoyance or frustration. She legitimately looked like she felt guilty. This reminds me so much of Hans from Frozen. Spoiler for Frozen if you haven't seen it, but most of us know that Hans was a twist villain who came to Arendelle with the intent to do nefarious things for his own benefit. However, after meeting Anna for the first time and dealing with her quirkiness, we don't see him do an evil smile when he's by himself. No, he gives a genuine smile where it looks like he's charmed by her. Who was that smile for? We know he has no feelings for her, so that's weird. We know now that Hans was never intended to be the main villain from the initial concept of Frozen. Elsa was. We were robbed. And that some shenanigans happened behind the scenes to make Elsa not the villain. Psst. By the way, if you want to hear a rewrite of Frozen where Elsa is the villain, I've got you covered. Please go check out that video after this one. So now, in the current canon of Frozen, we no longer have a villain because Let It Go is just too good, and thus we're scrambling for a villain. And Hans was the best option, I guess? And yes, I know animated movies take years to make, so they literally couldn't wait until the very last moment to make him a villain. I just mean throughout the planning and concept of it before everything got animated. But you understand what I mean. But his villainness seemed so tacked on at the last minute, even in the final product. Just like Cozy, why would he show or express any emotion that doesn't actually match what he's feeling when he's by himself? It's weird. Though I'll admit that Cozy felt more planned out than Hans did. This might be my bias talking, but she had more evidence of her bad side leading up to her twist than Hans did. Of course, that's up to you regarding if that makes her a good twist villain or not. But regardless, I'm sure for both cases we see these expressions on their faces during their private moments, specifically because the animators/storytellers are deliberately trying to deceive the audience. I intellectually understand that, but in universe, these behaviors don't make sense. It's really just that look of guilt that throws me off and makes me think Cozy hadn't totally turned to the dark side at this point. To be fair, we don't know when she started communicating with Tyrek. And let me remind you that she reached out to him, not vice versa. Of course, this doesn't make it right that he humored her, but the fact remains that she purposefully sought him out to learn about deleting magic. So for all we know, she may have always been a psychopath, but a harmless one who had no motivation to do evil or hurt others until she had a means of doing so. I refuse to think she was ever totally sweet from the bottom of her heart, otherwise she could have been reasoned with after she lost. I don't know. She's a weird character. Also, what's with the casual speciesism? In the Season 8 episode, What Lies Beneath, Cozy was needlessly being mean to the students who were not ponies. She'd taunt them and point out their flaws, but like, in a way to where it seems like she's trying to be nice so they couldn't lash out at her. She called out all of these species. But for what reason? It doesn't help her plan at all. Even if she truly believes the things she was saying, if she wants as many allies on her side as possible to be able to control them, you'd think she'd do her best to make friends with everyone, including the non-ponies. But in calling them out, she sort of put a target on her back and made herself suspicious to the non-ponies of the Young Six. She ended up sabotaging herself, and for what reason? This was her only moment of stupidity, and it really doesn't make sense for a character who's so smart. And she's not even that consistent with her speciesism. It's not like she loses sleep over her distaste of the other species like Chancellor Naysay seemed to. She seems fine with Tyrek and Chrysalis not being ponies. She never claimed that non-ponies were making things worse for anyone or anything. And it's not like she only badmouths non-ponies. In fact, Cozy will turn on and speak ill of anyone if it suits her plans, ponies included. She easily spread distasteful gossip about the Earth ponies and unicorns to other Pegasi, which now made her racist, but this particular case was more with the ultimate purpose of causing chaos and fear, not necessarily because she actually believes what she's saying. Honestly, the only conclusion I can come up with is that Cozy really is speciesist and accidentally just let it slip out without any filter, which, again, seems like a massive oversight on her character, whose talent is basically manipulation to mess up that badly in public, but whatever. At the end of the day, Cozy Glow is probably one of the, if not the weirdest important character in MLP, and she definitely feels incomplete to some degree. Even Chrysalis and Tyrek, and heck, even Sombra, got more stories dedicated to them in the comics. The comics of which have questionable canon, but regardless, they still got something. Cozy Glow got almost literally nothing. She's like the last firework during the grand finale of a fireworks show. Like the actual last single firework. As this single firework, she shot up and provided a bright, magnificent spectacle for all to behold. Probably one of the most memorable displays in the sky. But also, just like a firework, she fizzled out pretty quickly without much of a trace. Probably not the best analogy, but it's the best I've got. And once again, I do like Cozy. I really do. She's my second favorite MLP villain behind Starlight.
But Aloe, if you like her that much, and others really do as well, then is it honestly so weird that she was with the other Legacy bad guys at the end there?
Honestly, at the end of the day, no. It doesn't matter all that much. She was a fun character, and I'm glad we got to experience her. She's smart and super capable despite her small size and lack of physical power. She's most definitely earned my respect as a solid part of the cast of the show. But what do you guys think? Do you like Cozy Glow? Have you had a chance to experience her yet? Do you find her existence a bit weird as well? Comment below with your thoughts and the skull emoji, and let's get this conversation started. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Have a happy Halloween! But as for now, that's all there is. There isn't any more.